Hi, I'm David Carter, instructor for the Pre-Tech Building Trades class at the Center for Technology at Essex. In this episode, I'm going to look at the safety, setup, and operation of the table saw that we have in our shop. Being a good carpenter starts with safety. You need to know your tools and know your surroundings.
The table saw is a great tool for making rip cuts to make a board narrower. It is also great for cutting large sheet material like plywood. You can use the table saw to make cross cuts of pieces that don't fit on the miter saw, using the miter grooves.
And you can use the table saw to make more specialty cuts like dados and dovetails. But to make any of these cuts, you need to be thinking about safety the entire time. The first thing you want to be mindful of when using power tools is yourself and your personal safety equipment. The table saw is one of the most likely tools to grab loose clothing, so make sure you don't have on anything that could get caught. And also thinking about the little things like sweatshirt ties. I want all of my kids to either tie them up nice and tight, tuck them away, or better yet, just pull them off. When was the last time you actually used those ties for anything? Also make sure you don't have any headphone wires sticking out, or if you have baggy long sleeves on, make sure you take them off too. And the final thing to look out for is long hair. If you don't want to go to the extremes that I did, that's okay, but you need to tie it up if it's at all long and could get caught. Once everything dangerous is off, make sure you have your personal protection on. My students know that you need to have your safety glasses on at all times in the shop. But you can't forget about your hearing protection too. I said, you can't forget about your hearing protection too. Good. Now that you have yourself all set to go, let's set up the saw. There's really three main adjustments that you need to make a good cut: blade height, blade angle, and the fence. Every tool has slightly different adjustments, but they are all fairly intuitive once you know what you're looking for. This table saw has the bevel angle adjustment wheel used for making beveled rip cuts on the left-hand side of the saw. Turning the wheel will change the angle of the blade, and the bevel angle indicator in front will show you your angle. The wheel in front is how we adjust the blade height. Can you think why the height adjustment is in front with the bevel indicator? It's the adjustment that we use most frequently.
When setting the blade height for your cut, it should always be about 1/8 of an inch higher than your workpiece is thick. The reason for this is it minimizes exposure to the blade while cutting. As you can see, if the blade is a lot higher than the workpiece is thick, you have a lot of blade that could cut you. If it's just right, you minimize that risk.
Now that you have your blade height and angle set, the third and final key adjustment is the fence. This is what controls the dimension you're ripping your board to.
Some saws have a ruler built in as part of the saw as an indicator to set the fence. I still feel more comfortable setting my fence by measuring the distance from blade to fence. This is the only saw I've ever worked with where the fence indicator is actually fairly darn accurate. You also want to make sure that your fence is square by measuring from the fence to the miter grooves in the front of the blade and behind it. If you do that, your fence will be square.
Set the fence where you need it and lock it down. There are other adjustments you can do with your saw, but I will not cover those in this episode. They are more advanced and should only be used once you have mastered the basic training. With the saw all set, it's time to get your workpiece ready. As with any tool, the first thing you need to do is check your board for any warps, cracks, or foreign objects. If your board is really warped, don't use it. It's not worth the risk to you, and you're not going to get a great cut. If it's warped just a little bit, there are a few things that we can do to minimize risks and get you the best cut possible.
Keep cups face down so the rainbow is like a happy little rainbow reaching to the skies. Not face up like a scary dark canyon. Keep crowns pointing away from the fence and toward the blade.
The aim for both of these is to keep two surfaces on the fence or the table so that the board stays steady. Again, if it's really warped, don't use it. The safety risks don't offset the hassle of getting another board, and it's really hard to get an accurate cut to the dimension that you're looking for. When working with any tool, you should always check your workpiece for any screws, nails, staples, or other foreign objects that could interfere. Staples in the end of the boards are the ones I see forgotten the most. Lumber mills often use staples to attach tags that identify the boards. You need to make sure those aren't there. All right, the saw and the board are set. Now it's time to turn on the saw and get to it.
The saw in our shop is a SawStop brand that has a main power switch and then a separate switch to the blade as well. This is because of all the electronics that run the brake for the blade if it is touched. Turn on the main power, wait for the steady green lights, and then turn on the saw. If the lights aren't green, the saw won't turn on. If there is an issue, warn your instructor immediately. Now is the actual dangerous part, where we need to be extra focused and careful. While making a cut, do not stand directly behind the workpiece. Be sure you are keeping the board flat on the table and flat against the fence. Be sure to hold the board at all times. Apply pressure down and in with your left hand and feed the board with your right. Let the board slide through your left hand, keeping it in one place. When the end of the board reaches the table of the saw, while keeping your left hand holding the board, get your push stick and use that to finish pushing your board past the blade. Be sure to push your workpiece all the way through the blade before ever letting go. This is the place I've seen the most issues. If you don't get the board completely out of the saw and you let go, it is likely going to kick back on you. It could take your hand back into the blade or shoot the board back out with enough force to penetrate a wall 20 feet away. Turn your saw off. Remove your cutoff when the blade stops.
If at any point the board becomes difficult to push, turn the saw off. The piece is likely starting to bind on the blade. Never run the board backwards through the saw. It's really easy to lose control, and that's when things go bad. If you need to back out of a cut, be sure to turn the saw off, and while holding on the board the entire time, let the saw come to a stop, back the board out, reset, and start over. It's really important that you follow these safety tips while running your saw. Why don't we stand directly behind the workpiece while cutting? If the board does kick back, I'd rather it go into a repairable wall than into me. When you're done with the saw, if there aren't others who are going to be using it shortly, go ahead and turn the main power off to the saw. So in review, remove any loose clothing or accessories. Clear your work area. Inspect the saw for damages or debris. Inspect your workpiece for defects or obstructions. Adjust your blade height to 1/8 thicker than your board is. Set your fence. Turn the saw on. Cut the piece while maintaining a hold on your board the entire time. Turn the saw off and remove the waste. If you follow these safety tips, you should be able to make safe, accurate cuts, make your projects come out looking great. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to check out some of my other videos that cover the safety, setup, and operation of the other power tools in our shop.